आरव, आरव, स्कूल के लिए लेट हो रही है बेटा, चलो जल्दी, रिक्शा वाले अंकल आ गए होंगे। सुगंधा, आरव का टिफिन पैक कर दिया क्या? हाँ दीदी। आरव, आरव मैं तुमसे बात कर रही हूँ।
मम्मा बस 1 मिनट।
देखो रिक्शा वाले अंकल आ गए बेटा, चलो जल्दी, देर हो रही है। चलो चलो।
मम्मा आज तुम मुझे ड्रॉप कर दोगे, तब तक मेरी स्टडी कंप्लीट हो जाएगी।
No beta, I don't have time today. I have an important client meeting today.
मम्मा आप हमेशा ही ऐसे करते हो, प्लीज मम्मा।
Sorry बेटा, चलो चलो, देर हो रही है।
मम्मा
अरे चलो जाओ जल्दी।
बाय। हाँ आया। वाओ स्टार।
You are the star.
नो माय मम्मा इज स्टार।
कल बर्थडे है ना तुम्हारा?
हाँ चलो चलो, अभी मुझे देर हो रही है।
हाँ हाँ, स्कूल को देर हो रही है, जाओ जाओ।
हंसते हुए बच्चे कितने प्यारे लगते हैं।
हाँ, 6 महीने में शायद पहली बार हंसता हुआ देख रही हूँ।
ये आजकल के माँ बाप पता नहीं सोचते भी है या सोचने को फुर्सत है कि हमारा डिवोर्स हो गया तो बच्चों पर क्या गुजरेगी, क्या असर होगा। उन्हें तो लगता है शायद ये डिवोर्स एक डिलीट बटन की तरफ है, दबाया गया।
हाँ आरो, चलो कल सालगिरह है ना?
सालगिरह क्या, बर्थडे है।
ओ बर्थडे बर्थडे।
मैं ना ईशा का नाम लिखना ना भूल गया था, पर लिख डाला
कहाँ पे?
लिस्ट में।
अच्छा लिस्ट में, गुड गुड गुड।
सुगंधा, जाते समय दरवाजा अच्छे से बंद कर देना। और हाँ, कल थोड़ा जल्दी आना और अपनी बहन को भी साथ लेके आना, पार्टी है। अरे सुगंधा, वो पेपर प्लेट्स निकालना तो। हाँ दे दे। अरे रानी, अच्छा वो इसको लेकर आ गई, बड़ी सज धज के आई हो। हाँ वो बर्थडे है ना। रानी जरा बाहर देखना तो बच्चे क्या कर रहे हैं। हाँ। अरे रानी जरा इधर आना तो। आरव, अरे वो रिटर्न गिफ्ट के साथ क्या खेल रहे हो? वो तो जाते समय सबको देने हैं। चलो चलो, अभी पार्टी शुरू करनी है, तुम्हारे सारे दोस्त भी आ गए हैं।
मम्मा सभी फ्रेंड कहा मम्मा, जो मैंने आपको लिस्ट दी थी उसमें से तो आधे ही फ्रेंड्स आए हैं। आई नो दे विल कम श्योरली, लेट्स वेट फॉर सम टाइम।
अरे आरव, आरव चलो बच्चों, केक कट करना है अभी। आ रहे हो? चलो इधर आओ बेटा, केक कट करना है।
मम्मा मैं केक कट नहीं करूँगा जब तक रिया नहीं आती, अद्विक नहीं आता और जोशवा नहीं आता।
आ रहे हो? तुम इधर आओ। देखो आ रहे हो, तुम्हारे वो फ्रेंड्स नहीं आएंगे। चलो हम अभी केक कट करते हैं।
नहीं मम्मा, वो मेरे बेस्ट फ्रेंड्स हैं, वो ज़रूर आएंगे।
आ रहे हो? मैंने कहा ना तुम्हारे वो दोस्त नहीं आएंगे, क्योंकि मैंने उन्हें बुलाया ही नहीं है।
क्यों मम्मा?
आ रहे हो? चलो हम अभी केक कट करते हैं।
अब मुझे मेरे हर बर्थडे पर बुलाती हो।
आकाश, तुमने आज भी पी रखी है? अरे आज आरव का बर्थडे है, कम से कम आज तो नहीं पीनी थी।
क्यों? क्या कर रहा हूँ मैं? अगर थोड़ी सी पी लिए तुम्हें उससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है? और आज की सब तैयारी मैंने की है ना, तो मैं आरव को कभी किसी चीज की कोई कमी नहीं होने देता हूँ। तुम आज कितनी देर से आई हो?
आकाश, ऑफिस में मेरा बहुत ज्यादा काम था, मैं खेलने नहीं गई थी।
पता है मुझे तुम्हारा काम, टाइम पास मुझे मत बताओ।
कुछ भी मत बोलो आकाश।
चिल्लाओ मत, खुशी वाली बात करना मुझे भी आता है, चिल्लाना मुझे भी आता है।
ये क्या कर रहे हो आकाश? तुम तुम्हारी इन्हीं हरकतों से मैं तंग आ चुकी हूँ। मुझे नहीं रहना है तुम्हारे साथ।
नहीं रहना है ना, तो जाओ जाओ, चले जाओ इस घर को छोड़कर, अभी दोबारा आना मत यहाँ।
चलो अभी केक कट करेंगे।
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday dear Arav. Happy birthday to you. May God bless you. May God bless you. Happy birthday dear Arav. Happy birthday to you.
स्टॉप इट, कोई जरूरत नहीं है, ना ही मैं तुम्हारी कोई आरव से बात करवाऊंगी। तो ये गिफ्ट विफ्ट तो दूर की बात, तुम तो उसे विश करने के लायक भी नहीं हो आकाश। ये सब तुम्हें डिवोर्स से पहले सोचना था। नो 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 नो। और हाँ, मैंने तुम्हारे किसी को नहीं बुलाया जिससे तुम कनेक्टेड हो, ना ही उनके बच्चों को। हाँ हाँ पता है, वो आरव के बेस्ट फ्रेंड से, फिर भी नहीं बुलाया। समझ गए तुम? और सुनो, हेलो हेलो, आरव, गिफ्ट्स मिल गए? चलो अभी रिटर्न गिफ्ट देते हैं।
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
अरे रानी, ये लो तुम्हारे लिए, तुम्हारी बहुत हेल्प होगी।
आरव, वो तुम्हारे साथ बात नहीं करेंगे, वो तुम्हारे साथ खेलेंगे भी नहीं, क्योंकि तुमने उन्हें बर्थडे पार्टी में नहीं बुलाया।
आरव, अरे क्या हुआ? हेलो बेटा, क्या हुआ, स्कूल नहीं जाना है? ठीक है, मैं तुम्हारी माँ को फोन करता हूँ।
The number you have dialed is currently busy. Please try again later.
तुम्हारी मम्मी फोन नहीं उठा रही है। चलो मैं तुम्हें घर छोड़ता हूँ। अरे आ रहा हूँ।
अरे आरव, आरव यहाँ आओ, मम्मा बाहर गई है।
हाँ जी।
हाँ। आरव, क्या हुआ है बेटा?
देखो देखो, पहले उसे अंदर ले जाओ, कुछ खिलाओ इसे।
क्या खाओगे? चलो। देखो ना, माँ बाप की डिवोर्स का बच्चों पर कितना असर होता है।
उससे ज़्यादा असर उनका अपने में जो कंपटीशन और कॉन्फ्लिक्ट होता है ना, उसका होता है।
अब इसका क्या करें?
एक बात करो ना अर्चना से, वो समझ जाएगी।
डिवोर्स के बाद माँ बाप भले ही अलग हो जाए, मगर बच्चों की परवरिश की जिम्मेदारी दोनों की रहती है।
तो बच्चे कोई जिम्मेदारी नहीं होती, बच्चे अपने आप में एक इंसान होते हैं। ये बात समझ में आना चाहिए माँ बाप के।
बच्चे चाहे छोटे होते हैं मगर ना समझ नहीं होते।
अरे उनके लिए तो माँ बाप रोल मॉडल होते हैं ना। माँ बाप बच्चों के लिए रोल मॉडल होते हैं, तो उनको ये ध्यान में रखना चाहिए कि बच्चों का ध्यान माँ बाप क्या बोलते हैं इससे ज़्यादा माँ बाप एक दूसरे के साथ और लोगों के साथ कैसा बर्ताव करते हैं, इस पे उनका ज़्यादा ध्यान रहता है। तो आगे चलकर अगर उसी तरह का बर्ताव वो करने लगे तो उसके लिए जिम्मेदार माँ बाप है। ये ध्यान में रखें कि बच्चे साथ हैं तो अपना बेबनाव, अपने झगड़े उनके सामने मत कीजिए, और कम से कम उनको बताइए कि सारे लोगों ने मिलकर जुलकर अच्छा रहना चाहिए। अगर ये एक कर्तव्य की तरह से माँ बाप करें तो बच्चों के इमोशनल प्रॉब्लम बहुत कम हो जाएंगे। ध्यान में रखें।
This film to children all over the world, especially those who are caught up in conflict that is not of their making, but these innocent children as bystanders are having to face the consequences of these harsh realities that are around the world. Children are looking up to adults in their life, especially their own parents, as role models, and they are learning from them how to behave with other people in their life. So as adults, we should be teaching them that if there is a situation of conflict, how we need to sit down, talk amicably and resolve these issues rather than being selfish, wanting to get our own needs met, and also then using children in our battles with adults in our life. If I had a say in this, my desired ending of this film that we have made would have been that the mother realizes her mistake, and then when she goes to her son and apologizes for not calling the children that he wanted for his party, because she was being selfish and putting her needs ahead of his own. And what that little boy would have learned from his mother, that if ever he makes a mistake in his life and he realizes he's made a mistake, then the age of the person that he needs to apologize to doesn't matter. A mistake is a mistake. You apologize and you move on with it. And that is the message we'd like to spread to everybody in this world, especially parents and carers who are the role models for their children. Thank you very much.
Yeah, obviously divorce isn't wrong, but the main focus of the movie is about co-parenting even after a divorce, and making sure that the decision of the parents doesn't impact or influence the mental health of the kids. So that's our small effort in conveying that message. So I wanted to take this a little bit Bollywood. Since this short film, we are starting the second session of our day with a short film, a movie conveying a message. Our Bollywood movies have also conveyed a lot of similar messages. If you see my all-time favorite movie, Tare Zameen Par, none of us can forget that movie. It didn't deserve the recognition as much as it didn't get the recognition as much as it deserved when it got released. But then over the years, it was recognized as a movie ahead of its time. When Ishan was diagnosed with dyslexia, and his parents thought that he was just not putting in enough effort to study. And the scene still is etched in my mind where Ishan pleads his mother, telling that, "Mama, main to try kar rahi hu." And his mom helplessly has to listen to her husband, and they send him off to a boarding school, and he loses all of his smile. And then comes Three Idiots, obviously, Farhan's favorite famous dialogue, which is then turned on into a meme, but is actually a very depressing statement, "Abba nahi manenge," when he says that his father will not accept what he loves to do, but he is forced to do what his father wanted him to do. And children not being able to communicate their choices freely with their parents, or even when they communicate it with their parents, them not agreeing and forcing them to do what they wanted to do as a kid, or what their kid wants to do according to them. And as we move on, even if parenting is good, when it comes to movies like Chichore, where the son Raghav Pathak, he is basically not being able to get through the competitive exams which he gave for, and his parents are quite supportive, but still he pressurizes himself, telling that I have not lived up to my to the standards or expectations set by my parents, because they were university or like national level toppers, and I am not even able to clear the exams. And there's a very powerful dialogue in that movie where both Sushant and Shraddha mentions that I obviously spoke a lot about celebrating his success with a bottle of champagne after he gets through, but I never spoke to him about how to handle if he does fail. So not communicating with the children when they fail and not teaching them how to take failures and downtimes is also one of the key topics that we should be addressing as a society. And that is what session 2 is all about. We bring to you panel discussion 2, parenting, how it involves and affects mental health of children. So with this, we have 3 very powerful speakers. I would love to introduce the panel to you. The first speaker for the panel is Ms. Riddhi Joshi Patil. Riddhi is a certified child psychologist and parenting counselor, specializing in training and coaching corporate leaders, educators, and parents on mental health and behavior. Riddhi has conducted over 12,000 workshops, delivered more than 500K hours of talks, and 660K plus hours of counseling sessions, impacting over 600K students and women. She recently completed her 10,000th parenting session. I'm sorry, Riddhi ma'am, the numbers are too huge. I'm making small errors here. So Ms. Riddhi has been a speaker and advisor at institutions like IIM Ahmedabad, Rotary Club, Tata Power, Larsen & Toubro, and the Times of India. Her academic credentials include an MBA in HRD, child psychology, dance movement therapy, NLP and certifications from institutions like BSY University, King's College London, City and Guilds London, Tata Institute of Social Sciences and NMIMS Mumbai. Ms. Ridhi's mission is to empower and raise awareness about mental health and wellness among corporate leaders, educators, parents, frequently sharing her expertise through media interviews. Welcome, ma'am. Can we hear a huge round of applause? It's post-lunch. I think we all should be a little more energetic. Thank you. The second speaker for panel 2 is Ms. Gotha Haripriya. Ms. Haripriya is certified family life coach from Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. She has conducted hundreds of workshops for parents of children aged 0 to 7 years. And in her workshop, she emphasizes kindness and compassion towards parents and children. As one of the managing trustees of Coimbatore Parenting Network, she raises awareness on birthing, breastfeeding, and gentle parenting. While she has a postgraduate degree in engineering, she's shifted her focus after becoming a parent herself. Through extensive research and education, she discovered alternative parenting approaches and became a certified family life coach. Ms. Haripriya advocates for understanding children's needs and transforming parenting into a joyful and enriching experience. And her goal is to nurture empathetic and emotionally intelligent individuals in future. Welcome, Ms. Haripriya. And our final speaker for the panel is Mr. Haider Justin, leadership coach, psychotherapist and NLP practitioner. He is an organizational and leadership coach. He values the power of unlocking and community building in elevating individual awareness and collective consciousness. Before entering the HR world, he juggled his career from being a microbiologist, co-founder of an NGO, and writing for theatre. This roller coaster ride tapped various aspects of his personalities and interests. Beyond his day job, Haider is also a published Urdu poet, a TEDx speaker, and a strong advocate of mental health, LGBTQ inclusion, and allyship. When not at his work desk, he can be seen traveling and doing rounds of poetry. Welcome, Mr. Haider. For that powerful panel on parenting, I welcome Mindy's co-founder, Mr. Sairam, to moderate the panel, and I'll hand it over to him.
Thank you so much, Reena. Good afternoon to everybody. Hope tummies are full, but also not so full that you're sleepy. Yeah, we're going to have a really engaging conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time out. One thing that I like to call out is, coincidentally, today is Global Day of Parents. So a huge round of applause for all the parents in the room and the parents of those parents as well. The work that is being done as a parent is incredible. I have an 18-month-old. I can only imagine how much more difficult it's going to get as he grows a bit older. So congratulations once again. But I'll dive right into the conversation if that's all right. Go the first question to you. In your experience, what are some of the important aspects of mental and emotional well-being in children, especially in the early years, let's say 0 to 3 or even 0 to 5 years of a child?
Thank you for having me. Such an important question for us to be talking about today, because I am somebody who believes the adults that we turn out to be, the impact of the mental health of adults, dwells a lot in the beginning years and the experiences children have. So for me to begin with, I think my entire work revolves around the center point of an emotionally regulated adult being available for the child. When the child is going through emotional moments, big emotions in themselves, I think the presence of an adult who's emotionally regulated and available without distraction is the core of the work that I do and my belief. So that is a very important point for me, that one adult be available for the child at all times as much as possible. I also put that line because otherwise it's like too taxing on the parents to be available all the time for the children. So that is one. Next thing is, a big aspect is allowing children to be children. And I think we've lost the ability to know what it is to let a child be a child, because we live in a system which is all about hustle. It's about giving too much too soon to our children, that we don't let them have childhoods at all. Now the child is born and immediately I see that You know, in the beginning years itself, we are expecting them to be like adults, behave like adults, be emotionally regulated like adults, have conversations like adults. So I think unhurried childhood is a big step or a big aspect for me when it comes to emotional well-being of children as they grow older also. So that is one. And third, I think, is the presence of play. I can't stress enough about how important it is for children to have unstructured free play, because most of their time today is structured. They come from school, even I'm talking about as young as 2.5, 3-year-olds, all of their time is structured, and there is a lot happening in their day where they don't have time to play. So when people ask me, what do your children do during the day? I say they play. And people are like, play means what do they play? Do you teach them? What do you teach them? I'm like, no, they just play on their own. Because we are so away from play that it's so difficult for adults to comprehend free play for children, where they just play on their own without any agenda. There have to be moments where it's not educational, academic oriented, where children are just allowed to play freely at their own terms. It's amazing if adults can join in, but at least let's not try to take away that unstructured free play for children. And what is an added advantage or an added point that I would add is unstructured free play in nature. That's a huge aspect that I think is missing from children today. Nature. They're so, there was a reel that I saw that we are living in little boxes, watching where children are watching little boxes, and our lives are in little concrete boxes. So I think that is a very important aspect for mental health. I know it might seem very way off, but I think it plays a huge role how much time a child spends in nature.
That's brilliant. Actually, one of the things that you said kind of ties back to the first panel where I think it was Mr. Naveen who said, parents of children as young as, in first or second grade, they want their children to go to Ivy League schools and colleges and this, that and the other. And that kind of pressure, that kind of ambition on a really young child can be quite difficult, quite distressing. Riddhi, I'll come to you if that's all right. Goda talked a lot about creating an environment where a child can be a child. It's a nurturing environment, right? But it's easier said than done, especially in the kind of time and age that we live in. Most families have both parents working, they are away from their extended families in different cities, etc. In your experience, are there any suggestions that you might want to make of how parents can still offer that nurturing and that stimulating environment for the children to be children for as long as they need to be?
Thank you, Sairam, for having me here, and the question is just amazing. Something which I would like to talk. Well, it's easy. It's very easy for the parents because children have never asked quantity time from parents. They've always asked quality time. So even if the parents are working, it's absolutely okay. And few tips for all the parents, if they are parents here, and if there's counselors, can just take it ahead from here. Morning, waking up the child with a positive stroke and ending the day with a positive stroke. That ensures that the parent is there with the child. The child feels very secured. And what happens is that the anxiety in the parent is not escalated, right? Because the parent is taking conscious efforts of giving a positive stroke to the child in the morning and not calling out by name. Ya, jaldi karo, late ho gaya, and all that stuff, right? So it's all the mahal of love, care and affection, and that's how the day starts with. Sometimes maybe putting a note in the tiffin box is, you're lovely, I love you, I care for you. These small gestures do matter, okay? What matters more is that Weekend of the 2 days is where the parents can plan multiple things and ensure that within the family structure, mobile phones are just not there. Okay, it's kind of 2-day detox. Or even if you want to work on your phone or through your phone, ensure that when your child is sleeping, or just take your child into confidence and then start your work. So during the weekends, what you can start is you can do gardening together. Gardening ensures focus, concentration, patience, right? And the way you have nurtured your child, you are teaching that same concept to your child, right? So the child is not going to go further and bully somebody. The child is not going to hurt somebody, harm somebody, because the child is learning few values through gardening, okay? the parent can include the child in creating a grocery list. What matters here is we can be anybody who's who of the industry or the country, but that should not be understood or, that should not be given importance by our children, right? Children should understand that money matters, time matters, and both are very, very important. So including your children in grocery list, checking your children out as young as 2 years. Take your children out while you are doing grocery shopping. Involve them in creating a list. Ensure that you tell them that in these 3 months, what we are including in the list, apart from the khana pina and something which is very urgent, we won't buy anything. Let's collect money and buy a toy which you wanted. Collect money for that. So you're teaching so many different concepts to your child just by including your child in creating a grocery list or taking your child out for grocery shopping, right? Also, most important is during the weekend, while you want to spend really a good time with your child, have a corner in your house wherein kuch takiye rakhe hain, gadde rakhe hain, and that's a reading corner. Okay? So reading corner is where any book you read, half an hour reading, and then you discuss. Okay? You discuss your book, or your child discuss his level of book, and your husband, your spouse, I would not say husband, your spouse, talks about his level of books. Either it's one page, but what matters here and what discussions to be done is what are the takeaways for you, right? And last but not the least, having a family time creates a strong bonding between the family. Family is the spouses and the children. Grandparents are the extended family, okay? So here, while you're having a family time, instead of giving instructions to your children throughout the week, asking how was the school, what did your friend do, what did you do, teacher ne kya bola, use all these things to discuss during the family time. So talk about what you appreciate in each other. As spouses also, we forget to appreciate sometimes. Choti choti cheeze hai, and that's what we teach our children, that take people for granted. It's okay. Whatever they're doing, it's fine. It's their duty or right to do that. It's your right to take in, it's your duty to do that. So start with appreciating each other. Talk about how the week has been for each one of you, because things don't come to each one of us very easily. So you are teaching your child, you are bonding with your child, but you're also involving your child in your daily life, and you're teaching your child that I had problems, I had issues, I did cry, but then I thought that now what? So you're teaching your child resilience, and which is very, very important in this age. Right, while the world is absolutely turning towards AI. And then talk about things that you don't much appreciate in each other. Involve the spouses, involve the children. Let the children talk to you about it. Then your child will not go to Google and check answers. Your child will talk to you, discuss with you, come back with any mistakes have been done, because the child will know that during the family time or otherwise the child is not judged. So that space to create is very important, and that's how you bond, right? So gardening hai, cooking hai, even if you're doing daily chores, ghar ka, involve your children. Just maybe taking a basket of clothes to the washing machine, it's okay. Your children are included in everything you do. What we are doing currently is we are talking about things which are not age appropriate and which are not supposed to be discussed with children. That's what we're doing. I want parents to do the otherwise.
That's brilliant. So I heard 3 things, if that's all right. Number one is, quantity over quality. Quality over quantity, my bad. Quality over quantity in terms of time. The second thing being, just being intentional about involving the children in the day-to-day activities. And the last one being, just being present for them, and mentally and physically. Spend as much time as possible with them. That probably will allow them to explore their childhood and that curiosity that children have a bit longer and a bit better than sometimes it happens around us. Heather, I'll come to you. You've actually done a TEDx, which is a very interesting TEDx talk, and it talks about healing depression through expression. I've seen that TEDx talk a couple of times, and there's a lot of great insight, so I highly recommend everybody to watch it. But how do you propose that parents encourage their children to express their emotions to them?
Thank you for that question.
I mean, just before I answer that, I think it's interesting that not just it's a Global Parents Day, but also we just said we celebrated the Mental Health Awareness Month last month, and we are now starting the Pride Month, and all the three have some sort of an identity associated with my life and my journey, and I've spoken about some of this in that talk, but just briefly to kind of touch upon that, because that will give you some perspective of the response that I'll share. Is the talk is really about how was my childhood as someone who was really an obedient child, getting good marks in school, having good set of friends, all of that. But never there was an opportunity to express disagreements or an opportunity to share about what my likings are, how do I see myself in the school, or how am I being treated at school. Some of those conversations never happened at home, and I think it bubbled up, it stayed with me for the longest time, and I think at the age of 15 is when it took the shape of depression, and that's something which I talk about in that talk. And fast forward, I came out of that depression and I discovered that I had a beautiful side of poetry writing. That's something which I really tapped into. So when I look back and from my own experiences, what I have found valuable, and then now working as a leadership coach and a therapist, when I meet parents and I meet young adults and children, I see that there's very little opportunity we keep for conversations, of engaging on why someone is saying what they are saying, or we are very quick to kind of give advices, don't do this, but don't engage with the reasoning behind why are we saying, why this needs to be done or not be done. And what my fellow panelists were sharing, that the early years of development, the journey of a child becoming aware of their emotions and expressing takes a little time, and therefore it can't be hurried. And in that period is when the child will come again and again, multiple times, to express something. Now the importance is to how do we really treat those conversations. For example, a child who's getting bullied at school and coming back and sharing about it, maybe the parent would be like, okay, don't cry, be strong, be a man, go back and fight your battles. Now this is not engaging in the conversation. You're directly getting into advising, you're really putting the child in the space of judgment, and therefore the child realizes that maybe this is not a safe environment for me to come and talk about some of the difficult situations I'm having back in school. Or very quickly to say that be like your elder brother, be like your elder sibling, or be like this neighbor's son, Sharma ji ka beta. Yeah, some of those examples that have been given out. In that, the opportunity to really express, kind of the window becomes really shorter and shorter. And I think something very beautifully was captured in the movie. Child is really learning from the environment and how is it being role modeled. I was recently coaching one of the young manager, and one of the difficulty that the manager really brought in was that whenever there are presentations to senior management and there is a difficult part of that presentation that will come in, this manager would just excuse themselves and go and use the restroom or go and get some water or something like that, or will skip the meeting and things like that. When we really went into the depth of it, we realized that there's so much of that is associated with how the modeling was done in the house. So what we discovered was that as a child, what that person really witnessed in the house was the way to kind of get things done in the house for the mother was to sulk and leave the house and go and sit in the park. Right? So every time there was something that she wanted something from her husband, she would not engage in a dialogue, but she would just make a grumpy face, sulk, step out of the house and go in the park. Now this is the behavior that the child also picked up, that if I have to really get something met in my needs, then I'll probably need to just step out of something, withdraw myself out of that conversation, and then it would kind of get done. Or the other young adult which I was in a therapy session with, they would just bang the door and come out of the house and go and meet their friends. Now this was the modeling behavior by the father, who would always show anger by banging the door, not having a conversation, and just walking out of the house. Now this is how we see avenues of where there were opportunities to express and engage, but we withdrew and we did not really get into that space. The last bit, I think many conversations happened about overloading with hobby classes. It's great to kind of get the child exposed to that, but sometimes we forget that we are sending them not just to learn the skill, but also come back and then tap into it and express it. So if a child is learning art, drama, music, poetry, how are you allowing some of those avenues or those activities to really take shape in your household conversation to let the child express themselves? So those are some thoughts I have when it comes to how does a parent really involved in the expression.
Thanks, Haider. So the role modeling piece is absolutely spot on. Somebody told me in absolute good faith, but also in a joking way when I was expecting my baby, that children are like monkeys. Monkey see, monkey do. So you need to be very careful of what you say and what you do around them, because they're going to just mimic your behavior for a fair few years. Riddhi, I'm going to come to you about something that could take a full day, so I apologize for that. But if you could, in a snapshot, talk about the potential impact of childhood traumas, and I'm not talking about the obvious ones like physical sort of abuse or sexual abuse. I'm talking about the more subtle emotional sort of trauma that is caused in children. What are the impacts of that in the child's life, or perhaps as the child goes into an adult, in their adult life?
So it's important, Sairam, that we understand that what are the traumas actually, okay? Because people barely understand. So I would like to cite a case here, which like few years back I had catered to. The child was in 10th standard and was constantly, not in a good mood, very grumpy, couldn't study much, and the parents got the child to me. After a lot of probing, the thing that came out was really shocking. So the father had been a marathon runner in Mumbai, and he wanted his child also to be a marathon runner. So right from senior KG, while the child was in senior KG, वो हमारे यहाँ back roads होते हैं, right? So वहाँ पे the child was taken with a stopwatch, and he has to run. So the school is 7:30. The child was taken there by 5. So 5 to 6:30 you run on stopwatch, and then you go home, get dressed, have breakfast. Everything is time. I don't say time is not important, but you need to understand that this is also trauma. Now what happened is, this was the scenario till 2nd standard. Now what happened is that during the hits, sports hits, the child was came 2nd. So the father was just very annoyed, and he said, you can't do this. So from the sports hits to the finals, that was 1 week, the child was not sent to school, but to run for at least 4 hours a day in a break of 1.5 hour. Okay. The child was just not okay when the sports day was happening, and he had pain or he had fever, but he could not run. He came 4th. Now, while the child came home, and while the mother also was actually scared to get the child home, but while they came home, the father was waiting at the door itself, and when he opened, first aa gaya na? So he said, Papa, I couldn't perform. And just one word that was told by the father is, you are such a hopeless child. I expected so much from you. Okay? And that word hopeless started creating an identity for the child. So while he was in 10th, extremely intelligent, the IQ was 2x than his age, very creative, kind of made 2 applications, mobile applications. He sold it to some company, and he already was multimillionaire by that age, right? But he was studying also. But he would talk to me about life after death. He would talk to me that there should be a life where there's no talks or no expectations and trust. That nobody expects anything from me. So the child who was in 10, the word hopeless was his identity, in spite of being so successful. that's also a trauma. So trauma is just not having seeing an abuse, violence. It is all about the words also used by the parents, and I would say it's parenting bully. That's a term which I have coined, parenting bully, because parents knowingly or unknowingly have been doing it. I see that awareness, but I think it's going to take a lot of time. Now, what are the outcomes? The child doesn't trust himself or herself. The child doesn't trust other people. The child maybe starts with showing the sign of early depression by and say 12 or 13 years of age, lack of performance, lack of motivation within, high level of anxiety. High level of anxiety. Okay, ego state. The child constantly operates from ego state. So it's my way or highway. There's no other way there. Okay, so don't talk to me. Also, majority of the time, the child has some traits of narcissism created, right? Especially the trauma which is left, especially this sort of trauma, which are just not closed, or the parents have not taken efforts, right? We all know that when the, it's body abuse and that trauma, even if that is left unresolved, there are a lot of issues that happens in the child when the child is grown. I mean, grown as an adult. But even such traumas are kind of affecting. Also, however the child is performing, the child will always question whether I am, whether I am not. So that self-question and self-doubt also leads to a lot of mental health issues in the child. So there are a few of them which I could list right now. There are multiple Sairam, but at least here the parents should understand that the words spoken and the actions done or the behavior done with the child. And one prominent which causes trauma here is also the silent treatment that parents do, which I'll not talk to you. You come to me after 2 hours, you went stand there. That creates a lot of trauma in the child.
I know that's resonating so well with me because I've seen old people like people my parents' generation, to some extent my parents as well. A lot of them are very passive aggressive. So they say stuff like I'll leave you alone, then you realize my importance, or you keep eating me like this and something will happen to me, and all of that intentionally or unintentionally causes a fair bit of trauma in the children, and as I said, that can impact their adult life as well. So both, I'm going to come to you. You've done a lot of parenting workshops, and very early in their parenting journey. I know sometimes they are only still expecting their baby, right? Now, how do you or do you even talk about unintentional trauma that parents might pass on to their children? Especially the kind of generational trauma that they themselves might have experienced. When they say stuff like, "Oh, we were raised like this and we turned out just fine. So what's your problem?" So what how do you approach that aspect of mental health in your workshops?
Okay, it's a very interesting question because when we the word trauma has become quite familiar these days. It was not so when I was a child, but today I think many parents are aware of the word trauma and the fears that come with it. When it comes to generational trauma, first I want to talk to you about what it actually means, because it could actually be a very serious topic and it might be intimidating for many of us. So according to me, or my perception of generational trauma is just subconscious beliefs, limiting beliefs that we carry forward for generations without even realizing it. So say for example, in my family, adults are very uncomfortable around children playing. It's such a small thing. But where it came from is because for generations they have had to work really hard, toil very hard. So for them, playfulness means, you're not successful. So you have to be very structured, you have to be very serious. So for generation after generation, that's what they believed in. And so for me, that is what is a small example of how we carry forward. Another example could simply be that we, in our family or in most of the families that I work with, parents detach when children have a big emotion. Like I see a crying child and the mother or the father, they completely detach. They stonewall, not intentionally, but they just stonewall. They don't know what to do. They freeze. They either fight, flight or freeze. Either of those three is what you can see, but you can't see them emotionally regulating. So why? Because they have only seen that. They have seen their parents completely detaching from them. When a child is happy, everybody is okay to engage with the child. When the child is unhappy, most of the adults are not okay to engage with the child, sit with the child, let that emotion be and pass, and for the child to safely express their emotion, that aspect is not there. So why? Simply because generation after generation, emotions is scary. For us, especially big emotions are scary. So we just abandon the emotion, the person having the emotion. So that, according to me, is what is a generational trauma that carries forward generation after generation. And then I think what is beautiful about this generation parents is that they're asking questions. Oh, why does it have to be like that? So I'm seeing a huge wave of cycle breakers emerging with just this generation of parents, where they are questioning everything that they were told. And how we work around this in our workshops is my biggest aspect that I talk to about parents is triggers. What triggers you the most is what holds the answers to your curses that you have to break. So in my example, I found out, continuing from the examples that I was given before, if my children goof around a little extra, I find it very triggering. I have to, make them behave in a certain way, not even to perform for people, even if it's just me and the children, and they're goofing around, like being all over the place. One decibel extra of a sound could sometimes be triggering. I'm okay with a lot of noise, but one particular pitch of screaming actually gets to me. So that was my trigger. So which meant that I have to sit with myself and question myself, where is this coming from? What is this trying to communicate to me? What is this trigger trying to tell me? Another example is I get extremely triggered when I'm going on talking with them and they're not answering back. So that is my own, the trauma that I had about being abandoned as a child. Because I used to keep calling to my parents and they were so busy in their things that they were doing. So today if my child does the same to me, something in me stirs up and I'm very triggered. So triggers are a big point for the work. Around triggers can give us a lot of answers about generational trauma. On that note, I also want to add that, we keep talking that parents have to do this, parents have to do that. In the beginning years of my work, also it was a lot about doing what is right for the child. I have to, all of us have to come together and raise a child, be very gentle and compassionate to the child. But over the years, now that I have 2 children, my own journey as a parent has taught me that it's not the children that we need to save. It's the parents who need a lot of emotional support, a lot of presence of other adults, other parents around them who can be there for the adults. So for me, my work has transformed from working for children to working with the inner children of parents. Okay, so that I see is a big way that we can work around generational trauma, healing, all these heavily loaded words. I think when it trickles down to grassroots level, for me, it's about how can I sit with a mother or a father who has just been extremely rude and harsh with a child. How do I create that space for the parent so that whatever they're holding on to can be resolved within themselves. So
Thank you. That's good. That's quite beautiful. Last couple of questions, one for you, Heather, and then I'll come to you, Riddhi, to close it. So Heather, you are a psychotherapist as well. You wear many hats, but you're a psychotherapist as well, and you work with a lot of adolescents and teenagers. So in line with what Riddhi was speaking about earlier in terms of trauma and what both also spoke about, what are some of the behaviors or symptoms that you have seen in your conversations, especially with teenagers and older children? I know we focus a little bit on early years and younger children, but focusing a little bit on teenagers and older children, what are some of the symptoms or behaviors of this kind of trauma that we're talking about?
Sure. So first thing I want to share is I'm not a parent, but I've been listening to these conversations since morning. I work with parents and thought that was just coming was, man, this would be so daunting for parents, right? Every step you have to question that, am I doing the right thing? Is this how this is going to shape up this child? And few years down the line, is this child going to sit in a therapy room and talk about me doing things which I did not do it very intentionally, right? So I just want to put that out. And therefore, when I work with young adults, especially, right, and the one piece which I want to call out is the aspect of context is very important, right? Because while we may look at bullying, we look at trauma, everything, but where is this happening? What is the surrounding where this child is being brought up? What is the surrounding where this young adult is going and working or studying? And that context is very useful to keep in mind. I've worked with clients where the child would come home and say, I will not see anyone at home. Yeah, because we are right now in the times where both the parents would be working and the child is not, they're coming home to an empty home. And the moment the child will come in, they will drop their bags, get ready, and they'll run to tuitions, then there'll be some other classes and all of that. And when they come back, then there's very little time that is being left. And in that also, then they would see their parents either working on, on their laptops or busy with television. And therefore, what Riddhi was sharing in terms of the moments that really matter is something that one needs to kind of keep in mind in terms of what sort of rituals that I want to kind of have with this young adult and the child, and rather than getting into more advice mode, how can I just be invested in that? So I just want to put out that as parents, if we are kind to ourselves is also very important, right? Because sometimes parents have heard get into really guilty mode that what have I done? But maybe this is an opportunity to sit back and see, okay, what is it that I can do differently now, and keep that curiosity alive might be a good step forward. I was just listening to the conversations, and being a poet, I couldn't help it but write few lines. So I'm just going to read those because it just kind of sums up the essence which I was trying to make was ज़रूरत जिन्हें तुम्हारे वक्त की है, ज़रूरत जिन्हें तुम्हारे वक्त की है, उनके साथ कोई और सौदा मत करना। ज़रूरत जिन्हें तुम्हारे वक्त की है, उनके साथ कोई और सौदा मत करना। जिंदगी के सोमवार में एक हसीन इतवार की उम्मीद बनाए रखना। So that's something I find it very valuable. If there are fewer moments and rituals that can kind of keep it engaging and enriching for your relationship with your child, that's beautiful. The second bit I just want to call out, because I work with a lot of young adults and teenagers who are being sponsored into therapy by their parents. They may not be earning, and their parents are the ones who are sponsoring it. And somewhere there is this sense that I'm paying for the therapy, therefore it needs to move in the direction that I want. Yeah, like my child is behaving this way, I'm sending it to you. उसको ऐसा कुछ करो कि वो ऐसे behave करने लग जाए. Yes, it's almost telling the therapist कि you do this way and you do these things so that my child comes back home and starts respecting me. Yeah, and that's something I contract very strongly with parents, that all due respect to parents and educators who are worried for a child and they want the right thing to happen. But as someone else was sharing in the earlier panel, that a very strong contracting on what is the ethical boundary that I'm going to keep in my work with my client. For me, my client, the child or the young adult, is the person that I'm going to really take care of, and of course keeping in mind the protection and all of those pieces. Because I had one parent who would reach out to me after every therapy conversation is done with this child. They would message me and say, "Aaj kaisa raha session?" Yeah, and did the child bring up something about what I did yesterday with him? And it was just, and then I had to finally pick up the phone and have a very strong contracting conversation that I'll bring you in, or I'll summarize it whenever needed without really getting into the confidentiality or ethical boundaries, taking care of that. So I just feel that sometimes parents just need to trust the therapist or the counselor or the ones who are working with your child, and see how you can create an engaging relationship between the counselor, the therapist, the child, the educator, and use that as an ecosystem to kind of tap into, just something like that.
That's brilliant. For those who don't understand Hindi, I'll try to summarize that poem, right? Try to find a little bit of Sunday even on a Monday, right? And that's such a deep, beautiful thought. It could be 10 minutes, but you could spend that time with your child. Such a beautiful thought. But just kind of bringing back to the question that I had on hand, which is some of the symptoms and some of the things that I have read about, and I'm not an expert, I'm not a practitioner. excessive sort of time being spent on social media, exposure to pornography. In the first panel, they were talking about vaping and alcohol being consumed by students as well. So these are possibly symptoms that are originating from trauma that either parents or the surrounding environment, school, friends have caused. So really coming to you as a practitioner, as a psychologist, what are some of the proactive steps that parents can take to protect their children, especially teenagers and older children, from behaviors like these? I know there might be some unintentional trauma that they might have caused or other people might have caused, but in spite of that, could they still do something to protect their children from not being exposed to the kinds of things that I just mentioned?
So you rightly said that yes, substances, vaping and all are the outcome of traumas. While I don't endorse any of these things, but God forbid if your child is coming and telling you that I tasted this or I did it, don't react. Because if you're going to react, the child will never come and talk to you. That's a thumb rule you need to understand. Okay? So you need to, I'm not saying that I'm endorsing, I'm just saying that you need to have a non-judgmental space. I have not taken cigarette, your dada, your papa, nobody has taken. Keep your dialogues with yourself. Currently what is needed is talk about it. Talk about how was the taste, how did you feel. Let me just explain about the responsibilities associated with it, okay? Because Google is not going to come and explain that, right? So as a parent, it's your responsibility to talk about the responsibilities associated in regard to any act done by the child, whether it's behavior or whether it's any substances. Second important thing is that while you are listening to the child or while the child is coming and talking to you about anything, absolutely non-judgmental space. Non-judgmental space also means that you don't think different here. We say, okay, I'm listening to you, I'm there for you, but you're, kaisa ladka hai, mera hi ladka hai. You know, that dialogues are happening. So that two things are very different. And that gap is seen by the children because body licks. And when your body is licking is where in terms of your body language, your communication, non-verbal, is where the children understand that gap. It's very important to tell your child, I understand. The golden words to be used is, I understand. Okay? The most important. Second is, if you feel that you cannot explain your children about any of these things and you are worried about it, takes a professional into help, into consideration, take the professional into confidence, talk, explain the scenario and ask them to solve it for you. Okay, but not as the way what Heather was talking, because yes, I've experienced multiple times that parents would come and ask us that ye cheez problem hai, ab itna solve kar do. That doesn't happen because wo cheez surface level pe hai. The things are very different when we talk to the child as a psychologist. Third here and very important is that take educators into support. Okay, because there are times when the child is having different personality at home, behavior at home, because the child knows that this is what my parent is observing or this is what my parent is actually talking about. And if I am the child and I'm in the space, or I come from the space which is into parent pleasing, I will not do certain type of behavior at home, but I will certainly do that behavior at school, right? So it's important that parents start considering the pyramid. It's triangle, not even pyramid. Triangle is parents, educators and children work in hand in hand, right? And the below level can be extended as a therapist, a counselor. So talk to the educators, talk to the school counselors, okay? And probably they must have observed something, and this is something which you can just discuss to your children, discuss with your children, explain. Never ever talk about how your life has been, what are the experiences and instances that you have heard about and you don't want your child to repeat, is something which I really want the parents to avoid. And one thing which I would really want to, while you were talking about pornography and all, there have been multiple instances recorded where parents are not mindful about the existence or the presence of the child in the room, and certain acts done in the room thinking that the child is just 1.5-year-old or 2-year-old has certainly led to trauma in the child later on, right? Because while the physical act is on, the child, whom the child is very comfortable with, is where the child starts feeling that the other parent is harming my mother or my father. It's either spouse. So it's very important that what acts you do, where you do, is very important. But not to stop children from a family hug, or not to just stop about kissing your spouse or kissing your children, but explaining how, where and when. That is very, very important.
That's brilliant, and it just means that I think parents have to learn a lot about getting these things right, but also be intentional about it.
More than intentional, I personally feel is just take a deep breath before you react.
Right.
As simple as that.
Right.
Okay. Amen.
Right.
That's what solves the problem.
It's easier said than done, I'm sure, but it's also as critical. It's really important that you respond and not react to this, not react to the situation. So thank you so much. I know this is the kind of topic that we could go on and on and on. I'm sure the audience have a ton of questions for us. I'm going to request the backbenchers, if that's all right, if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to take for our panel speakers. I can't see, sorry? One or two questions, that's fine. I can't see the hands because of the light, so I request Reena to take the mic.
Anybody from here would like to ask a question?
Hi, I'm Gauri this side. I'm not a mental health professional. I am just interested in this space, and I have it's a question that's very close to my heart. We're talking about parents and how they can help kids ensure better mental health. If, as a third person outside of that parent-child relationship, you see that there's a potential scope for the parent to go talk to a mental health professional, how do you suggest that without really offending them? Because this is such a sensitive subject, and the parent-child relationship is so, again, sensitive. How do you pick that conversation? How do you offer support without really offending? And this is a question that any one of you can answer, please.
Do I take this? That's a very beautiful question and very important as well. Many a times parents come to me that my child, I see problem in my child. I want to get my child to you, but is it okay if I say that you're my friend or you have been my neighbor and you're just talking about career counseling? And I always say, please talk to your child that, you know what, I see that you're not getting answers for this and this and this. I as a parent, I don't have answers. Let's go to this auntie and seek answers together. It is very important as a parent to be truthful to your child. Creating stories is strict no-no. Okay? If you see some issues there, if you see that your child is not getting answers, and if you as a parent are unable to solve it, it's okay to just sit and talk about it. You might not be able to use professional language, but it's okay. Talk about what is bothering you. And when you talk in I language, that solves half of the purpose. I hope this helps.
We'll take one more question, and of course, the panel speakers will be around for any offline questions, but we'll take one more before we close this particular panel.
Ms. Riddhi, you spoke about how we need to create as parents, we need to create a non-judgmental space for our children, not to give a reaction per se when they come and share that, I tried a cigarette or a vape, or I watched porn for the first time. Instead of giving a reaction, maybe try to understand the underlying reasons to what led to that particular circumstance. What do you feel about things like which is not age inappropriate, maybe some other things like ma'am was speaking about generational trauma, right? So there a parent might have a very strong belief that if you're going to grow up to be an engineer or a doctor or an architect, it's going to give you a good life or a better life. But if you tell me today that you want to be a gamer or a dancer or something which may not have a very successful career in or not much scope, if they have a mentality like that, what kind of reaction should a parent give to the student, or how can they handle that kind of thing coming from a child, that I want to grow up to be a influencer or whatever it may be?
Lovely. Yes, and that's what the children talk about, this language for sure, what you just said. When your children are coming up with such strong statements, and probably if it's not your belief, it is important that you talk about the strengths. You talk about, oh wow, you could achieve this, let's make a reward chart. Very simply deviate the child from when such strong statements are coming. And eventually you can lead to that. It's all about your strengths. It's all about how empathetic you are. It's all about how much emotions and how much emotional vocabulary you have. Okay? And deviate the child in things till 10 years, I would say, not more than that. If above 10, then talk to the child that these are statements, and statements don't give us a healthy soch or things that we start judging ourselves. So that needs to be spoken to the child if the child is above 10. If it's below 10, it's important that you deviate. And while you deviate, it's important that you address this in a very simple manner, talking about making the child realize that strengths are important, emotions are important, emotional vocabulary is important, being empathetic is important, and loving oneself is important. And that only a parent can do. I hope this helps.
Thank you so much, Riddhi. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Gota, for this wonderful, wonderful conversation. As with all good things, this has to come to an end as well. I hope you can hang around and answer more questions that the audience might have. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all. Three of you. It was again